Good morning. Seriously? Good morning. It is a beautiful day, both outside and here. So glad you are with us today. Just a little bit to let you know some of what's going to be going on, especially if you're visiting with us. Right after our closing prayer, there will be classes for all ages. Adults will meet in this room. And right after that closing prayer, I'm going to be standing down here and I'm going to be talking to that camera right there. I will be talking for about 5 minutes to folks who are live streaming between our assembly and our class. So don't get spooked by that. After that closing prayer, you got 5 minutes, stand up, stretch your legs, do whatever you need to do. And I know when someone stands up talking that we tend to not move. Take your cue from the fact that my back will be to you, and that's your cue. You're free for the next 5 minutes to get up, stretch your legs. We do want you to stay. Our class runs about 20 minutes, and great time together. We invite you to stay. Take your kids, let them have a great learning opportunity, and you as well. Again, so glad you're here. I'm going to ask you to do something. Those of you who are parents or grandparents, sometime today, take 2 or 3, 5 minutes with your kids, with your grandkids, and explain what this day means. In the Old Testament, Israel had what were called festivals. Feast of the Passover, Feast of Booths, things like that. They had special ways of remembering. When they crossed the Jordan River, the clans would pick up stones and they would take them across the river and they stacked those stones up. And God told them, I want you to stack those stones so that when your kids ask you, what do those stones mean? Then you can share with them the significance of that Ebenezer. If we lose the significance, then the feasts become hollow and meaningless. If we lose the interpretation, then that Ebenezer is just a stack of stones. You guys, I want you to understand that we're in a time of challenge because this morning, folks all over this nation, even all over the world, rose up and their kids would find baskets with eggs and goodies and toys. Many of those children are not going to understand the significance of why we do that because it's not going to be shared with them. Now, you're here because you want to acknowledge the significance of that. And what is the significance? Jesus rose from the dead. Now, the thing about it, that is an impossible concept. It's difficult to believe. It's unget-overable. And if we lose the significance of that, because you see in many of our schools today, the name of Jesus is not welcome, but the celebration of Easter is, isn't it? You go to Walmart or places like that, and you'll see aisle after aisle after aisle of candies and toys and treats. And there's children all over who are celebrating the candies and the toys and the treats, but what does it mean? And woe unto us if we lose that significance. But we will lose that significance if we don't pass that on from generation to generation. I'm telling you, parents and grandparents, it's going to mean 1,000% more for your kids to hear it from you than to hear it from me. To see in your eyes when you share the significance of what that resurrection means to you. And if you don't get excited and enthusiastic about that resurrection, your wood's wet. We can change this trend just by sharing that message with our kids and our grandkids, and they share it, and the message just grows and multiplies. Would you do that sometime today? The reason I'm asking for that is because this message of the restoration through the resurrection is a scandal. It's always has been. And in a nation in which science is becoming God, science and miracles tend to be mortal enemies. And as science takes over, then the idea of a miracle, especially this miracle of resurrection, which up to the time of Jesus, nobody had ever seen before. When those women went to the tomb, they were overwhelmed. When they went back with a message, Jesus' own disciples, whom he had prepared for this event, didn't believe it. Acts chapter 4, verse 1. And as they were speaking to the people, the priests and captains of the temple guard and the Sadducees came upon them, being greatly disturbed because they were teaching the people and proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection from the dead. Acts 17, verse 18. And also some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers were conversing with Paul. And some were saying, "What would this idle babbler wish to say?" Others, "He seems to be a proclaimer of strange deities because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection." Paul at the Areopagus, standing before probably the most esteemed philosophers and teachers in the world of that day. Because that's what Athens was. And they gave him opportunity to speak. What did he speak about? Jesus and the resurrection. And at the resurrection, they scoffed. That's ridiculous. Acts 17, verse 32. Now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some began to sneer. Acts 24, verse 20. Or else let these men themselves tell what misdeed they found when I stood before the council. Paul speaking. Other than for this one statement, which I shouted out while among them, for the resurrection of the dead, I am on trial here today because of you. This is a scandal. And Paul identified that in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 23. For we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Greeks. Stumbling block to Jews, foolishness to Greeks. Doesn't that pretty much sum up humanity? This resurrection is the Greek word skandalion, which we get the word scandal. The idea that one can come back from the grave. You guys understand this is becoming more and more of a scandal, and as this separation of Easter from the resurrection takes place, we lose the significance of the fact that we are celebrating today. Jesus rose from the grave. Now, Steve, explain that. Because there's things we know about. When he came back, you see, he wasn't raised from the dead. He was resurrected from the dead. He was transformed, like Paul promised would happen to those who believe in him and follow him. And some things we know is when they came, those that had walked with him and knew him, when they saw him, they didn't resurrect, they didn't recognize him. He had changed. He walked through a locked door of the upper room. He would walk with people and suddenly he wasn't there. Explain that. Explain what form he had. Explain the resurrection body. Here's what I can tell you. That resurrected Jesus was able to walk through locked doors. He was able to walk beside you and suddenly be gone. He was not recognizable to people until he made himself. That's all I can tell you. I don't understand it, but I'm telling you I believe it. Even though it's a scandal. And today I want us to look at the scandal because it's becoming more and more scandalous in our culture. As our culture becomes more secular, as it becomes more science-oriented. And guys, if you remember the days of Desert Storm in 1990, we had already begun a huge movement towards secularization in this culture. But I remember in 1990, when we were about to go to war, places that you would have never seen it before. There would be signs outside of stores. There'd be signs outside of schools that said, pray for our troops and pray for our country. We were reminded we need God. How much of that have you heard in the last year? We are expecting science to save us, aren't we? We're expecting science to cure this pandemic, aren't we? Now, can God use science? Absolutely. But I'm just using that to illustrate we have gone in just 30 years from being a nation that was shaken by events that could overwhelm us, and we were shaken to our need, and folks that had never in a long time said, we need to be praying, were saying, we need to be praying. Where are the voices now? Science, save us. Scientists, you're our saviors. The scandal of the resurrection is that God has power not only of life, principalities, He has power over death itself. And not just power over death itself, which He demonstrated in Christ Jesus, and these men that we're looking at were witnesses to that. Not just power over death, but once death is defeated, it can never enter your existence ever again. Explain it. I can't. I can't explain any miracle of God. I'll take a relatively small miracle, and there's no such thing. That's an oxymoron. Changing water to wine. How do you do it? I don't know, but He did it. How do you walk on water? Did the water become solid when He placed a foot? Did it become gel-like? Or did the water just push back against Him? Or did He not even need water to walk? I don't know, but He did it. Brothers and sisters, the resurrection is scandal. It's our reason for living. That's why you're here this morning. Acts chapter 1, verse 21. Judas is dead. They're trying to choose another guy. It is therefore necessary that the one who hath accompanied us all the time that we were with the Lord Jesus came in and out among us, beginning with the baptism of John until the day that He was taken up from us. One of these should become a witness with us of His resurrection. What they were looking for in the man who ultimately became Matthias to take over Judas' spot was, he needs to have seen everything that we've done, but with us, he needs to be a witness to give testimony to the resurrection of Jesus. Why? Because it's going to be a stumbling block to our fellow men, foolishness to the Greeks. 1 Corinthians 15:12. Now, if Christ is preached that He has been raised from the dead, how do some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead? But if there's no resurrection of the dead, not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain. Your faith also is vain. Moreover, we're even found to be false witnesses against God, because we witness against God that He raised Him from the dead, whom He did not raise, if in fact the dead are not raised. For if the dead are not raised, not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, your faith is worthless. You are still in your sins. Then those also who have fallen asleep in Christ have perished. And not just perished in death. They're perishing. If we have hope in Christ in this life only, we are of most to be pitied of all men. What does it mean to believe? 1 Corinthians 4, verse 10. We are fools for Christ's sake. But you are prudent in Christ. We are weak, but you are strong. You are distinguished, but we are without honor. To this present hour, we are both hungry and thirsty and poorly clothed and are roughly treated and are homeless, and we toil working with our own hands, and we are reviled. We bless when we are persecuted, when we endure, when we are slandered, we try to conciliate. We have become the scum of the world, the dregs of all things, even unto now. That's Paul's description of those who believe in the resurrection. We're fools for Christ. There was a book written about Alexander Campbell, and the title of the book is Fool of God. If Paul was a fool, God send us more fools. In fact, I think we ought to start a club. And I think the title of the club should be the same title that Paul gives himself here. How about Scum of the Earth? We could get jackets made. We could have them embroidered or embossed on the back, something like Hell's Angels has, that says Scum of the Earth. Scum of the earth. And in fact, we could add to that a Fort Gibson chapter, dregs of all things. Scum of the earth, Fort Gibson chapter, dregs of all things. If Paul's a fool, God make us fools. Because we believe and we preach the resurrection. Paul is, in his own words, scum of the earth. Let's get scummy. So often we live in fear that someone might think we're not wise or smart. We live in fear that someone might make fun of us because we follow someone they can't see in the sky. We believe in what is unbelievable, and that's that Christ not only rose from the dead, he came out totally transformed. You can't explain it to them because they have to believe it by faith. What you have to show them is the testimony of people who saw it and died for it. Brothers and sisters, when you accept that, when you accept, I am scum. It's Paul's description. I am dregs of all things. It's hard for somebody to make you feel bad then, isn't it? Prove this. Next time you're at a funeral and you can pass by, let everybody else go in front of you, take a little time, lean down to the person and say, you look terrible. And see their reaction. You can't offend a dead man. You can't hurt someone's feelings who's trying to defend something that doesn't exist. So if somebody's ready to call you scum, be ready to grin. Because you're in great company. Scum of the earth. Dregs of all things. Brothers and sisters, we're here this morning because we believe Christ came out of the tomb, not just raised from the dead, resurrected once and for all. Amen? And those who believe in him, who are baptized into him and united with him in death, raised in the likeness of his resurrection by coming up out of the water, Romans chapter 6, first 6 verses. They're going to share with him that resurrection. Your resurrection, my resurrection. We're going to come not just raised from the dead, but the mortal will take on immorality. This corruptible will take on incorruption. That's what we live for. And if we accept the world views us as scum, if we accept that we are the dregs of all that is, if we accept we're fools in their eyes, they can't hurt us. And we're not only willing to live for that truth, we're willing to die for it. And I'm telling you, the day that the church is ready to die for the message of the gospel, which is the death, the burial, and the what? The resurrection. What's significant about that? Jesus died. Everybody dies. Jesus was buried. Everybody's buried. Jesus rose from the dead, resurrected. There's the problem. There's the glory. There's the power. I want to know Christ and the power of His rising. I'm ready to be scum. I'm ready to be dregs. If that's what the world wants to call me, I'll put a feather in my hat and call myself that. Parker, you got to be scum to believe that. Yeah, I am. But enough about me. Let me tell you about Him. Call me what you want. I'm already a dead man because I died in that burial with Him. The old man died, again, Romans chapter 6, raised to walk in newness of life. Because of that spiritual resurrection that gives me the hope of an eternal resurrection. Are you ready to be scum? If Paul's a fool, God make us fools. If Paul's a scum, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors, we need more scum. If Paul was the dregs of everything that existed, God scraped the bottom of the barrel and bring up some more dregs. Romans chapter 10, verse 9 and 10, that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with the heart man believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. For the scripture says, whoever believes in Him will not be disappointed. There's 2 points in that. One is, do you believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead? And secondly, do you confess it with your mouth? Not enough for it to be in here only. We got to say it. But you know as well as I do, if you say it, they're going to call you what? You're an idiot. You're a dummy. You're a fool. Bring it on. Because I am in good company. You got to be the dregs of humanity to believe that. Yes, I am. Let me tell you why. Brothers and sisters, it's time for the people of God to say so. You can't just believe it in the corner of your room. You can't just believe it Sunday morning when it's safe. With the mouth we confess. And you can't confess unless you're talking. Set your fear aside. You're afraid of what people are going to think about it. Lower yourself in your own mind. Paul was a fool. He was scum. He was dregs of all it is. When you will embrace that, there's nothing the world can do to you. Nothing they can say to you. It will take your power away because you know Christ and the power of His rising. Share in His suffering. Be conformed to His death. And in that way, I will receive a resurrection like His. Fool for God, bring it on. Fool of God, bring it on. There is nothing greater to be. Tell your children, you're a fool of God. And you hope they will be too, because you believe in the resurrection. Have you acknowledged in your heart, do you believe without a shadow of a doubt that God raised Him from the dead? Are you willing to confess that with your mouth before men? And this is a safe place to do it because these folks believe it here, but that's why they're here. They believe it too. Are you willing to be buried with Him? Let the old man die, the man of sin die, raised to walk in the likeness of His resurrection, raised to walk in newness of life, coming out of that water pure and clean, having demonstrated the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus to everyone in this room. Are you ready to be a fool for God? Are you ready to be the dregs? Are you ready to be scum? Look around you. There's a lot of scum in this room. It offended you if I'd said that in the beginning, wouldn't it? Why don't you join us? I'm telling you, the view from the bottom of the barrel is amazing, because the view is straight up, and that's where Son of God sits on the right hand of God, waiting for you. Can we help you in any way? You want to obey that response? You ready to become a fool for God? If we can help you do that in any way, and we invite you to come as we stand and sing together. God bless you for being part of that with us. Now, please join us for class. Morning again. Take your Bibles, if you would, turn to the book of James, chapter 1. James, chapter 1. One of my favorite New Testament words is hupomone in the Greek, constancy under trial. I think it's one of the most profound marks of a Christian. It's also the profound mark of anybody who succeeds in anything. Anyone will tell you formula success involves constancy. Keep on keeping on, to never quit. And it's a beautiful Greek word, hupomone. It means when the weight of the world is on you, you keep going. Now, part of the challenge with that is we are people who walk by sight so often, and the challenge that we have is run the race. Yes, but how far? If you're like me, the coach says, Steve, I want you to run. How far am I running? Am I running a 220, a 440? Am I running a mile, or am I running a marathon? Because you have to pace yourself differently in each one of those, don't you? And the fear is, if you say run and I take off like it's a 220 sprint, I'm going to run out of energy before I get very far. And if you're expecting me to run a marathon, I'm not going to make it. And that's the challenge with keep on keeping on, is we want to pace ourselves. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment, where that pacing comes from. But guys, we're surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses. I want to just name a few, and when you do things like this, you always risk of those who are not included, those that could be, etc., and you just fill in names as you think of them. But when I think of Mabel Taylor and her hupomone, don't you? Not just that, Brittany at age 19, who's stood up with broad shoulders in a very tough situation when most of us are thinking about ourselves when we're 19 and we've graduated and what we're going to do, and how she's taking care of Mabel. Encourage Brittany when you see her. Give her a hug. Tell her how much she means to you, because she's got a long road ahead of her, and she is living to that. Dale Byfield, Nana Dodd. You don't know how you light people up, and you just walk in here. Same with you, Ethel. You light them up in a different way. Nana, you light their fuse. You light their path. Appreciate you ladies so much. Leon Strain, to watch him as he was dying, and he had a protracted death. And to watch him have to deal with every day, and you guys know Leon, how he didn't want to be a burden to anybody. When he couldn't even sit up in his chair, when he would sit up, and the only way he could breathe was to lean forward. And to stand and watch that, and we all felt like Job's friends in the presence of Job. Man, you're watching this, and what words do I have? How do you talk about that? Marvin Rockman, Linda Schaefer, every time she walks in this building, she empowers every one of us, doesn't she? Doesn't she? Yes. Betty Martin. You can go on and on and on. There was a woman just like that when I was in Chickasha by the name of Lil Marshall. Lil Marshall was a pistol. She loved to golf, and she took our youth minister, Jason Hosh, golfing once. She beat him because she was a good golfer. She was in her late 80s at that point. When they came back, I asked her, you taking Jason golfing again? Because, it's probably good for the ego because you beat him. She said, well, I can beat a lot of people, but I'm not going to take him again. Well, how come? I don't want his wife to get jealous. She was that kind of woman. In fact, my second time teaching Bible class, she was sitting in the classroom down at the front. Amazing sense of humor. And I was teaching Bible class, and I referenced Moses. And she's one of those people who can whisper and fill a room. You know the type I'm talking about? And I was teaching about Moses, and she turned to the person next to her and said, well, that's not the way Moses told it to me. Lil would talk about, as her age advanced, and she was in her late 90s when she died. She talked about, once she was telling me, Steve, in the morning, you know how when you turn on your computer, how it goes through that CMOS, that self-test, to figure out, is the monitor working, is the keyboard working, and it's got beeps. She said, I do that every morning. I wake up, my feet going to work, my hands going to work. She was serious. And she said, sometimes it takes me 30 minutes to go through that test to get ready to get up. And she said, and I don't want to because it hurts to get up. But I know if I don't, I'm going to die in this bed. Folks like that who show that constancy under trial are a testimony to all of us. And guys, I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of COVID. Sick and tired of hearing about it. Sick and tired of it covering the news. I'm sick and tired of having to wear these masks. I'm sick and tired of getting to the front door of Dollar General, forgot my mask, and have to go back to the truck, put the mask on to go in. Tired of staying 6 feet away from you. But it reminds me, and I'm tired of things like this. And I read this to the folks at home just a minute ago. But I read this week, and we're getting so many conflicting messages right now. Epidemiologist Dr. Larry Brilliant, best known for his work eradicating smallpox, on Thursday of this week, expressed concerns over new coronavirus variants and stressed the need for a backup plan in addition to vaccinations to control the pandemic. I'm quite worried about the variants. We seem to be getting not only many variants, but variants of concern almost every week, Brilliant told CNN's Aaron Burnett. Daily new infections in the United States have plateaued to around 60,000, and the public health experts warned that a fourth wave of the virus could be about to crash down on the country. A coronavirus strain that originated in South America, for example, renders the AstraZeneca vaccine 90% ineffective. Had you heard about this? Took me by surprise. A variant first seen in Brazil can now allow reinfection, and one that emerged in the United Kingdom is more transmissible. I think that's one of the reasons that this week the director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, said, and I quote, she sees signs of impending doom. Now, it shocked me because what I was hearing was, in this state, we're going to open up. In Texas, they've opened up for weeks. And what's going on? And guys, part of the challenge of, like anything else, any mission is dependent on its intel. And the intel that we're getting is confusing. Now, guys, I want you to be praying for and encouraging our leaders because they're having to make choices about Bible classes, about masks, continuing when we're all sick and tired of this and we're ready to be done with it. They're having to make choices with conflicting intel. Man, let your heart go out to them. Pray for them. Encourage them. Submit to them. Because they're watching over your souls and over your health. I, for one, am glad I'm a preacher because I wouldn't want their jobs. James chapter 1, verse 2. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces hupomene, constancy under trial. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. I'm sick and tired of this COVID, but we're being tested. Our patience is being tested. Our faith is being tested. Guys, how many folks are not going to come back to congregations all over the place after the pandemic? Our faith is being tested. Our endurance is being tested. And at the time we get sick and tired, at the time when we're running the race, as Paul called it, and your side is hurting so much, and that grass over there looks like a perfect place to lay down in and just wallow. That's when you are being perfected. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. Oh, for a coach that said, Parker, I want you to run. How fast? Run as fast as you can. How far? As far as you can. That's depressing, isn't it? Because I know my limits. But he who empowers me is limitless. And he shows what he can do when we've reached our limit. And we think we can't go on. Can you imagine being lost in the desert? It's 100 plus temperature and the sun's out. And it's just dune after dune after dune, and you climb a dune with the hopes that you're going to see an oasis or a town, Pepsi machine, something. All you see in the distance is another dune. And when you come over this dune, you just see another one in the far distance, meaning your spirit falls. Because what I just did, I got to do all over with no promise. That's the feeling. And guys, that's where some of us are getting in these trials, because we've got COVID on top of everything else that we're having to deal with. And sometimes we grow so tired. Called a good buddy of mine, hospital, heart issues. They're going to have to do bypasses and work on a valve. And I was talking to him right before he went in for his angiogram. He said, Steve, I'm just so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of hurting. I'm just ready to go home. Brother, if it's your time, God calls you home, that's where you're going to be. But if not, for me to live as Christ, to die as gain. Now I'm going to run until I have run out of energy and breath, and both sides are hurting. And then God will say, watch this. And brothers and sisters, I think he created the phenomenon of this second wind to give us a little bit of an insight of what he can do. When you are up against the wall, and then all of a sudden the pain just starts going away, and you feel like you can run. And he'll do that, and he'll do that, and he'll do that. Can you imagine being one of the priests carrying the ark to the Jordan River? And you're in front, and some estimates, 1 million to 1.5 million people behind you, and they're following you. And you know what happens. You ever been to a rock concert? You know what happens when everybody rushes the stage, don't you? And these guys are carrying the ark, and they get 100 feet from the river, and it's roaring. They get 50 feet, and it's roaring. They get 25 feet, and it's roaring. And if they want to stop, they can't. And what happens? When did God move? As soon as their toes hit the water, God said, watch this. He pushed them to the edge. Why? He's perfecting them. He's teaching them hupomene. I'm tired of waiting on experts to get their act together so that we can know. I I'm frustrated to no end that I'm vaccinated, Charlotte's vaccinated, my mom in a nursing home in Tyler is vaccinated, but we can't go in there and sit with her in her room. Rather, we've got to take my 92-year-old mom out of that place and run her to death just getting her to and from the car. Why did we have the vaccines if we can't be together vaccinated? Doesn't make sense. I'm tired of it. That's not the point. God's perfecting us. I'm tired of waiting on experts. I'm tired of no timeline. I'm tired of the question, when are we going to be able to do this? When are we going to be? I don't know. Get me some good intel. And I know you're tired of asking the questions. Brothers and sisters, I will wait forever on God. And I believe He is driving this thing. And I believe when the time is right, when He has done with this, as He does with every calamity, every challenge, every trial, count it all joy. When I'm getting tired, James says, rejoice. You know what rejoice means? Stir it up again. Get your joy going again. Why? Because God's perfecting you. And God cares enough about you to perfect you. God cares enough about you to waste His time with you. Let it not be a waste. Brothers and sisters, re-up your joy. You'll wait forever on God, I hope. I hope you, if you haven't decided that, COVID, no COVID, doesn't matter. Trials, whatever. I will wait forever if that's what God wants. He will stretch us no more than we need to be stretched. He doesn't do it to hurt us. He does it to embolden us, strengthen us, to make us mighty warriors. Perfect is His word. He is perfecting you and me. If what I read you from Dr. Brilliant is true, I may never get to go into the room with my mom. Don't know how much longer she has. She's going down fast. I hate that. But I will say goodbye to her from outside the room. If God will only do in me what He promised through James that He is doing, I will wait forever. Will you? Yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. Doesn't that sound like heaven? Brothers and sisters, we can have it on this side of heaven. God is our strength. And when you are up against the wall with no patience, no energy, no respite from the pain, He will give you what you need if you will wait. Waiting on God is never about impatience. It's about being perfected. God is using various trials to make you perfect. Our response is, God, you take all the time you need, because I'm a long way from perfect. Don't miss a thing. Give me everything you've got. Take all the time you need. Guys, would you remind me of what I just told you when I complained? Because I know Steve, and I will. And if you'll just say, hey, Steve, you remember that Easter Sunday when... You're right. I'm sorry. And right then and right there, we'll have a prayer that God will give me hupomene so that I can be perfect. And that I will wait forever on God, if that's what it takes. Bow with me. Father, make us fools. Father, help us to embrace being the dregs of everything in the scum of the earth. Father, perfect us. Use what the world is lamenting about as another trial to teach us hupomene, constancy under trial. To teach us this crowd of witnesses that we have talked about, of folks who have shown us by their constancy under trial what it means to persevere, what it means to endure. Father, use their example to embolden and empower us. Father, we as a united heart, as a united mind today, Father, we tell you, we confess to you, we will wait as long as it takes for you. Continue and bring to fruition this work that you have begun in us, through your Spirit in us, through the message of Christ Jesus. Bring us to that completion, to that perfection. We want that more than anything. And we promise and declare to you today, we will endure any and every trial that comes our way. Because that's you demonstrating your love for us in perfecting us. We will wait on you for as long as it takes. In the blessed name of your Son, by the power of his resurrection. Amen. God bless you. Have a great day. Tell your kids, tell your grandkids what this day means.